Hi, it's Paul Maunder from Production Expert. This is Dynamic Grading 2 from Playfair Audio. It's an advanced dynamics processing tool which provides a novel approach to compression and expansion. Before I get into the description, let's hear some audio consisting of some music and voiceover. I'm using dynamic grading on the VO. Here it is before.
Social media was off the scale too, with over 350,000 LinkedIn impressions. All in all, over 9,000 votes have been cast. So now, with all the votes counted, it's time to reveal the winner.
And after.
Social media was off the scale too, with over 350,000 LinkedIn impressions. All in all, over 9,000 votes have been cast. So now, with all the votes counted, it's time to reveal the winner.
Okay, so let's delve into how this works. The heart of dynamic grading is the display of the dynamic histograms. Here you can see the input and output. The histograms represent where the energy in your signal is concentrated. We'll hear this in action shortly, but initially you can see that both histograms are actually showing the same thing, and that's because we haven't applied any dynamics processing yet. The plugin provides two thresholds. These are just the boundary points for three distinct sections. The part where most of the action happens is defined as body. Within this section, we can set a ratio for compression or expansion. Clicking and dragging on the ratio setting in the body section is one way to do this, but you can also affect it using the sliders in this target section. The louder parts of the source audio are defined as punch, and this can be set to compress or expand independently of the body. Once again, we can drag the ratio control here, or in this case, hovering just above the upper threshold, we can set the punch ratio by dragging this. Notice how the background graphics change to reflect what's going on with the ratio. Wider on the left and narrow on the right means compression, and the opposite means expansion. Finally, there's the floor section, which is the lower part of the signal. This again has its own ratio for compression or expansion. We also have an output gain control. Over on the right hand side, we have the spectrum control. This affects how dynamic grading responds across the frequency spectrum. For bright or treble heavy audio, set this to the left, which corresponds to white noise. For bass heavy content, this can be set further to the right on the brown setting. For most purposes, a good general setting is around the middle, with the default being pink 3.0. There are response and release controls, a channel slider when used in stereo or multi-channel formats, a graph depicting the overall compression expansion curve, and an amount slider, which is essentially a wet-dry balance control. Let's go back to that voiceover again. In this case, I've used dynamic grading to compress the body at just over 3:1. I've left the punch range untouched in this case, and I've applied some expansion to the floor range. On dialogue and voiceover recordings, this can help bring background noise and reverberation down if they're present, but also help to prevent low-level detail from being exaggerated unnecessarily. Once again, here's the audio with dynamic grading bypassed.
Social media was off the scale too, with over 350,000 LinkedIn impressions. All in all, over 9,000 votes have been cast.
And with dynamic grading,
social media was off the scale too, with over 350,000 LinkedIn impressions. All in all, over 9,000 votes have been cast.
It really helps to allow the voiceover to cut through. Next, we've got some sound effects, starting out with a sci-fi weapon sound. In this case, I've set both the floor and body ranges to compress, and the punch is set to apply light expansion. Here it is before processing, and after processing. In that example, I've used it to really help sustain the tail. Let's try the same thing on a conventional gunshot. First, let's hear it without dynamic grading, and then with. When you need to compress a whole mix, for example when repurposing a feature film which was mixed for cinema so it can be shown online where a narrower dynamic range might be preferable, dynamic grading is once again a good choice. It supports formats all the way from mono through stereo up to 9.1.6. Here I'm using it on a 5.1 mix. Here's a section before processing.
You have no idea the sound of an invasion. The invasion noise is just unbelievable because not only are you getting mortars coming in, but you have airplanes flying right over your head.
So this is a mix which was done for cinema, and its dynamic range is fairly wide. Consequently, when we heard it just then on YouTube, the dialogue sounds very quiet in comparison to the sound effects because it's not suited to this platform. Dynamic grading can help with this, restricting the dynamics so it can repurpose the mix. Here it is with processing.
You have no idea the sound of an invasion. The invasion noise is just unbelievable because not only are you getting mortars coming in, but you have airplanes flying right over your head.
So that's dynamic grading 2 from Playfair Audio. For more information, check out my article on the Production Expert blog or visit playfair-audio.com. Thanks for watching.